Overwintering Dahlias. Now, overwintering dahlias, there's two main options. Leave them in the ground and mulch, or lift them and store the tubers. The first option is fine if you've got a free draining soil and you're not in a frost pocket and you mulch them heavily with soil or straw on top. Once the frost basically cuts all the leaves down, you can just mulch over there and they should come back next year no problem. If you get a very heavy frost for weeks on end, or you're in an area with really heavy soil, then they will rot in the cold, wet winters. So the second option is to lift them and store the tubers in a frost-free location. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. It's finished flowering. I'm going to dig up the tubers without injuring them at all, but to be really careful. So if you get a fork and lift them up from quite a distance so that they don't actually pierce the tubers, which will increase rot and obviously damage the tubers, so you'll get a less healthy plant next year. So I'll dig this up now. Now I've dug up the dahlia there, kept all the tubers intact, and now we've got two options. The first option is to pot that up in some old compost, put it in a pot and leave it be overwinter in a frost-free condition. And the reason people do that is obviously the compost around it keeps it so the tubers don't completely dry out, which is not good for the plant. Although you buy them from garden centres, which have been dug up and dried completely free of any compost or anything, they don't like that for months and months on an end. So just putting that in a pot like that, with old compost, stored away frost-free in a cellar, garage, under a greenhouse bench, cut back the foliage, and it should be fine and start sprouting next March, April time. The other option is what I'm going to show you, is basically to wash off all the compost. I'm going to cut off the foliage, leave 5 or 6 inches of the main stalk, and we're going to dry them out somewhat. So I'm just going to wash off all this compost now and show you the next stage. So now you can see how I've washed off all the compost. You can see how all the numerous tubers have formed over summer, and all these feed into the main part of the plant. So the next stage is to cut the foliage off, give it 4 to 6 inches above the top of the tubers. Now really you should wait till all the foliage has been frosted off before digging them up, just so you've got the longest possible time to enjoy the flowers. But as this one has got no flower buds on whatsoever, it's pretty much given up, I've decided to dig this one up now. So all we do is cut through the main stems, which you'll see are hollow, and then the next stage is to hang this upside down for a week or so, and this is to draw out a lot of the moisture from the stems and the excess moisture from the tubers, which will help prevent rot in winter. So I'm going to store this for a week now. When I get it out, what I'll do is just check around the top, make sure there's no mould formed or it's gone soft or anything here. If it has, I'll just cut back a little bit more of the stem, but you want to keep a few inches of this stem. That's to stop any rot penetrating into the tubers themselves and where they all connect. And the next stage will be to dust with sulfur powder all over the tubers, especially around the top here where the stem's connected to the tubers, just down the hollow stem as well. Once you've done that, place that into some compost or sand. It's slightly damp, doesn't want to be completely bone dry, and that'll be fine in a frost-free place over winter. And then in February, March time, you can start propagating, either by splitting this into a few pieces, making sure you keep a bit of the base plate, which is this area around here. If you just pull off a piece of tube like that, it won't grow a new plant, because it does need what are called eyes, the new grow points, which are just form at the bottom of the stem here. Or another way of getting lots of cuttings next spring is to plant this in, again, February, March time, somewhere warm. You'll get lots and lots of new growth, new stems forming. Once they're about 4 to 5 inches tall, cut them off and pot them into little individual pots, and they will root very quickly as cuttings. But you've got to make sure you do it before they get to 6-7 inches tall, because they'll start going hollow. Once they go hollow, you can't take cuttings off them anymore, they just won't work, so they've got to be just the first few inches. Another thing about dahlias, if you wish, you can eat the flowers. They are completely edible, the flowers that is. Not something I've tried myself, but if you ever fancy making a nice decorative salad, something a bit tropical, stick some dahlia flowers in it. So I'll wait for this to dry, hang it upside down for a week, and then I'll store it as I've just gone over. And next spring, if I don't want to go about splitting it or taking cuttings, I'll plant this in a pot, put it in the cold frame, the greenhouse, or just outside from April time onwards, and it'll start growing. Once its roots are formed and it's several inches high, plant it out in the garden once all frost is past from mid-May onwards, depending on where you live. And that's how I overwinter dahlias, rather than just potting them up, because this way you get to put the sulfur powder on, you get to dry them out a bit, and over winter you can inspect them as well. Make sure that they're not rotting away. If one starts rotting away, just throw it away, so you don't infect all the other dahlias that you might be storing in the same tray.